They want to take the interview that I did with Debbie Lenhart regarding the forensic investigation, which wasn't a forensic investigation with Pete. They want that interview taken down. So they're going hard after that, and they've submitted something to YouTube and they want it taken down. But we have it on 8 platforms.
The internet is on fire after Joni Lamb reportedly demanded YouTube take down Laura Lynn's explosive interview. And now everyone's asking the same question. What is she trying to hide? What started as a casual conversation turned into a viral storm that has Daystar fans shocked and insiders whispering about damage control, secrets, pressure, and a desperate attempt to erase the truth. But once it's online, can it ever really disappear? It started with a simple conversation. No dramatic intro, no breaking headline. Just 2 women sitting across from each other, a camera rolling quietly between them. Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson, known for her bold interviews and fearless opinions, had invited Debbie Lenhart to talk about something that had been bothering her for a long time, a so-called forensic investigation involving a man named Pete. Debbie didn't come to gossip. She came with notes, timelines, and questions that no one else seemed willing to ask. From the start, the tone was calm, but the words carried weight. Debbie talked about missing paperwork, conflicting statements, and unanswered questions. What had been presented publicly as a detailed investigation didn't look that way to her at all. She said it felt more like a cover-up than a search for truth. As she spoke, Laura Lynn barely interrupted. She just let her talk. There was a tension in the room that viewers could feel even through the screen. When the interview went live, it didn't explode right away. At first, it spread slowly, shared in private Facebook groups, sent through Telegram chats, whispered about in church circles. But once a few big channels clipped certain moments and posted them to YouTube and Rumble, everything changed. People started debating, speculating, and demanding answers. It was like watching a spark catch dry leaves. What made the video powerful wasn't just what Debbie said, it was how she said it. Calm, certain, like someone who'd seen too much to stay silent. Some called her brave, others said she was reckless. But everyone was watching. Within days, the interview had gone viral, racking up thousands of views across multiple platforms. Laura Lynn had no idea that this quiet, hour-long talk would turn into a storm. But as the shares multiplied, so did the whispers. And somewhere far away, people in positions of power started paying attention, and not in a good way. What began as a small, honest conversation was about to ignite something much bigger than either of them ever expected. When Joni Lamb first heard about the Laura Lynn interview, it was through a text message from one of her staff. Just a quick note, you might want to see this. She was in her office halfway through answering emails when curiosity got the better of her. She clicked the link and pressed play. What she saw made her blood run cold. On the screen, Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson sat across from Debbie Lenhart, calmly discussing what they called a forensic investigation. But as Joni listened, it was clear the conversation wasn't about finding truth. It was about questioning integrity. Debbie's words were sharp but steady, her tone confident, her claims unsettling. Missing files, contradictory stories, supposed gaps in an inquiry involving a man named Pete, someone Joni knew well. Joni sat back in her chair, arms crossed, her face tight. She knew instantly this wasn't harmless chatter. To her, it sounded like an attack, a dangerous mix of misinformation and speculation. Even though Daystar wasn't mentioned by name, anyone familiar with her circle would connect the dots. And once people connected those dots, the fallout could be massive. By the next morning, the clip had already started spreading. Viewers were pulling quotes, making reaction videos, and tagging her name in comments. Is this about Daystar? Is Joni covering something up? It didn't matter that most of it was guesswork. The story was gaining momentum. Joni called an emergency meeting. Her senior producers, legal team, and communication staff gathered around the long glass table in the conference room. The air was thick with tension. She played the interview on a big screen, fast-forwarding through parts, pausing on key moments. Debbie's words echoed through the room. The timelines don't match. The documents are missing. Someone's hiding the truth. When the video ended, no one spoke for a moment. Then one of her lawyers finally said what everyone was thinking. This could get ugly. Joni nodded slowly. She wasn't angry in the way people might expect. She wasn't shouting or pacing. She was coldly focused. File a complaint, she said. Today. By noon, her team had drafted a takedown request addressed to YouTube. The language was firm. The video was defamatory, misleading, and harmful. They argued it contained false claims that could damage reputations and spread confusion among viewers. For Joni, this wasn't about ego. It was about protecting the ministry she and her late husband Marcus had built over decades. In her mind, this was spiritual warfare disguised as journalism. But the internet doesn't stop for paperwork. Within hours of filing the request, Joni realized she was already playing catch-up. The interview wasn't just on YouTube. It had been mirrored on Rumble, Telegram, BitChute, Vimeo, even Facebook Reels. Every time one version came down, 2 more popped up. The harder she tried to contain it, the faster it spread. Her advisors warned her about the Streisand effect, the idea that trying to hide something only makes people look harder, but Joni didn't care. If it's false, it shouldn't exist, she told them. I won't let lies stand unchallenged. Behind closed doors, she started calling people she trusted, pastors, media figures, friends in the Christian world. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She was building a wall of support. She explained that this wasn't about silencing truth. It was about stopping gossip before it destroyed good people. If they can do this to me, she told one pastor, they can do it to any of us. Still, not everyone saw it her way. Some colleagues quietly warned her that trying to remove the video might only draw more attention to it. Others thought she should make a public statement, face the controversy head-on, and explain her side. But Joni hesitated. Words could be twisted, intentions could be misread. The media loved a good scandal, especially when it involved faith leaders. So, she chose silence, or at least the appearance of it. Publicly, she said nothing. Privately, she was relentless. She sent her team to follow up with YouTube, to gather documentation, to pressure the platform for action. She told her staff to review Daystar's content guidelines, to vet every guest and host. If this storm came from one interview, she wasn't going to let another one catch her off guard. At home, the weight of it all pressed down on her. She'd faced criticism before, but this felt different. It wasn't just outside enemies. It was insiders, people who knew her world, hinting that she might have something to hide. She spent nights in prayer, pacing her living room, asking for guidance. Lord, help me protect what you built, she whispered. Let truth win. The next Sunday, she walked on stage at Daystar's Dallas studio, just as she had for years. The lights were bright, the audience quiet. She smiled, calm and steady, never mentioning the controversy. To her followers, she looked unshaken. But behind that composure was a woman fighting to hold her world together. Meanwhile, Laura Lynn refused to back down. She tweeted, posted, and told her followers the interview had been uploaded to 8 platforms and wouldn't disappear. Her supporters rallied around her, calling Joni's actions censorship and proof that the truth was hitting too close to home. The internet took sides. Or stand with Laura versus protect Daystar. For Joni, this wasn't just noise. It was a personal trial. Every headline, every video, every comment that questioned her faith or her integrity cut deep. She'd spent decades building Daystar into one of the largest Christian networks in the world. Now, it felt like the same digital landscape she once used to share God's message was being turned against her. Still, she didn't retreat. She doubled down methodically and quietly. I won't fight fire with fire, she told her inner circle. I'll fight it with truth and patience. But the truth, at least in the court of public opinion, had already become subjective. Everyone had their version, and no matter what she said or didn't say, the story kept growing on its own. In the end, Joni's response wasn't the outburst her critics expected. It was quieter, sharper, more deliberate. She wasn't fighting for headlines. She was fighting for control of her message, her legacy, and her faith. To her supporters, it was strength. To her critics, it was fear. But to Joni, it was survival. And in a world where one video could undo a lifetime of work, survival felt like the only battle worth fighting. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the internet had already turned the Laura Lynn interview into something far bigger than anyone expected. It wasn't just a conversation anymore. It was a war of words, a digital wildfire no one could contain. The clip was everywhere. YouTube, Rumble, Telegram, Facebook, Twitter, even TikTok. People weren't just watching, they were dissecting it, quoting it, debating it. Every second of that interview became a piece of evidence in a much bigger argument about truth, censorship, and power. At first, it looked like just another viral moment, the kind that comes and goes within days. But this one hit differently. The moment Joni Lamb's takedown request became public, the tone of the entire conversation shifted. What started as whispers about a forensic investigation suddenly turned into a rallying cry for freedom of speech. Viewers flooded comment sections accusing Joni of trying to silence the truth. Hashtags like "Just let the video stay" and "Risao, what is Joni hiding?" started trending in small online communities and then spread wider. Supporters of Laura Lynn praised her for standing up to a media giant. They called her brave, fearless, the kind of voice Christianity needed, someone who wouldn't bow to powerful names or hidden hands. They said this wasn't just about one interview. It was about a system that had gone unchecked for too long. They believed Joni's reaction was proof that the video had struck a nerve, that something was being covered up. Meanwhile, Joni supporters saw things completely differently. They believed the video was dangerous, a reckless spread of half-truths and rumors dressed up as journalism. They said Laura Lynn didn't care about the damage her words might cause. To them, Joni wasn't hiding anything. She was doing what any responsible leader should do, protecting people's reputations and stopping gossip before it destroyed lives. "This isn't censorship," one of her fans tweeted. "This is wisdom." And so, the internet split down the middle. On one side were those waving the flag of free speech, shouting that truth should never be silenced. On the other side were those calling for responsibility, warning that freedom without facts can ruin innocent people. Between them stood YouTube, a platform caught in the middle of an impossible fight. As the controversy spread, creators began uploading reaction videos, podcasts, and live streams about it. Some analyzed every frame of the interview like detectives. Others mocked the situation, calling it another church scandal gone digital. Every voice added fuel to the fire. Some claimed they had insider knowledge. Others swore they had proof that Daystar's lawyers were threatening smaller creators. None of it could be verified, but at that point, truth almost didn't matter. The story had become bigger than facts. It had become emotion. For Joni, watching all of this unfold was painful. Her name was trending for all the wrong reasons. She refused to go on camera to defend herself, but silence didn't stop the noise. People started posting old clips of her sermons, twisting her words into memes and mockery. "She preaches truth," one comment said, "but can't handle it when it's about her." It stung deeply, not just because it hurt her image, but because it hurt her mission. At the same time, Laura Lynn found herself thrust into a spotlight she hadn't expected. Overnight, her subscriber count doubled, her inbox filled with messages of support and hate. Some called her a hero, others a liar. She didn't back down. "If they're trying this hard to silence me," she told her viewers in a follow-up post, "then I know I'm over the target." That single line spread faster than the original interview. Screenshots of her words filled social media feeds. People turned her into a symbol of resistance. But not everyone saw her as a hero. Some journalists began questioning her methods. They pointed out that Debbie's claims hadn't been verified, that speculation was being treated as fact. Others said Laura Lynn was using controversy for clicks and views. But the truth no longer fit neatly into headlines. It had become a story people felt, not one they fully understood. Inside YouTube headquarters, moderators and lawyers debated what to do. The takedown request from Joni's team was sitting on someone's desk, but every move had consequences. Remove the video, and they'd be accused of censorship. Leave it up, and they could face legal threats. It was a lose-lose situation. Meanwhile, the video was still spreading across platforms that didn't care about takedown notices. By week's end, the situation had turned into something almost surreal. Small churches were holding prayer meetings about it. Pastors were giving sermons on truth in the digital age. News outlets picked up the story, calling it a clash between Christian media and free speech. The more people talked about shutting the interview down, the more unstoppable it became. For Joni, it was a nightmare. She had built her life on television, on controlling the message, on presenting faith in a polished, structured way. Now, for the first time, she couldn't control the story. The internet had taken it and turned it into something wild, untamable, and permanent. For Laura Lynn, it was validation, proof that her voice mattered, that people were hungry for transparency and not afraid to question authority. But for everyone watching, it became something deeper than a feud. It became a mirror, showing how fragile truth can be in an age where emotion travels faster than facts. It wasn't just about Joni or Laura anymore. It was about trust, belief, and who gets to shape the story when everyone has a camera and a platform. And as the dust kept rising, one truth became impossible to ignore. No one was fully in control anymore. The interview had left its cage, and it was never going back. When the dust began to settle, the internet didn't go quiet. It just changed tone. The outrage, the arguments, the viral hashtags, they all started to fade into something heavier, something slower. Reflection. People were left staring at their screens, not just thinking about Joni Lamb or Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson, but about what the whole thing really said about the world of faith and media. For years, Christian broadcasting had been seen as a safe space, a place where people could escape the noise of the world and find hope, prayer, and connection. It was built on trust. Viewers believed that the people on screen were guided by something higher, that their words were rooted in faith, not profit or power. But after this storm, that trust didn't feel the same. Something had cracked, and everyone could feel it. The fight between Joni and Laura Lynn wasn't just about one interview. It was about control. Who gets to decide what truth looks like in a digital age? Joni believed she was defending integrity, stopping misinformation before it damaged reputations and ministries. Laura Lynn believed she was exposing the kind of secrecy that had gone unchallenged for too long. Both women were convinced they were doing the right thing. But in the eyes of the public, it became impossible to tell where conviction ended and control began. As the controversy grew, the question of censorship became unavoidable. Was Joni really protecting the truth, or was she trying to shape it? Was Laura Lynn being a truth-teller or a provocateur chasing views? Those were the questions echoing through social media, podcasts, and church circles. And as people debated, something uncomfortable became clear. The line between responsibility and censorship had become almost invisible. On one side, you had people shouting that the church had gone soft, that leaders had become too powerful, too secretive, hiding behind polished lights and tax exemptions. They said faith media had turned into a brand, more about image and influence than honesty. On the other side, you had those who warned that the internet had turned everyone into self-appointed judges, that no one cared about evidence anymore, only outrage. That accountability had become another word for public humiliation. Both sides had a point, and both sides were exhausted. Behind the screens, Joni tried to rebuild her footing. She stopped talking about the video publicly, but the tension never left the air. Inside Daystar's offices, staff whispered about the fallout. Viewers were writing in, asking for explanations, demanding transparency. Some longtime supporters stopped donating. Others doubled down, sending messages of love and prayer, telling her to stand strong. Joni read every word. Some nights, she sat in her office long after everyone had gone home. The studio lights dimmed, the building quiet, wondering how it had all come to this. She'd started with a dream, to spread faith and hope through television. Now, she was the center of an online storm about censorship and control. Laura Lynn, meanwhile, was facing her own version of the chaos. She had wanted to spark a conversation about honesty in the church, and she had, but she hadn't expected the backlash, the accusations, the hate mail, the constant noise. Some of her own friends warned her that she'd crossed a line. Others told her she was changing history. In the middle of all that noise, she sat at her desk, staring at her inbox, feeling the strange weight that comes when your words have consequences bigger than you imagined. The bigger picture was becoming impossible to ignore. Faith media, once defined by trust and loyalty, was now being held to new standards. Viewers weren't just passive watchers anymore. They were fact-checkers, commentators, critics. They could pause a sermon, Google the preacher, and find out in minutes whether their man of God had a private jet or a pending lawsuit. The age of blind trust was ending. The Joni Lamb controversy had lit a fuse that reached far beyond Daystar. Pastors, ministry leaders, and Christian influencers started rethinking their transparency. Churches quietly hired PR consultants. Ministries reviewed their boards. Everyone could feel it. The world was watching closer than ever before. The old ways of doing things, closed doors, hidden ledgers, unspoken rules, no longer worked in a world where one viral video could unravel decades of reputation. And yet, something deeper was happening too. Beneath the noise and conflict, there was a kind of awakening. People weren't just angry, They were hungry for authenticity, for spiritual leaders who admitted mistakes, who spoke with humility instead of polish, for ministries that showed their books and didn't hide behind excuses, for honesty that wasn't rehearsed or PR approved. The fight over the Laura Lynn interview became a symbol for something bigger, the collision between faith and transparency in the modern age. It wasn't about YouTube or censorship anymore. It was about how faith communities were going to survive in a world where truth couldn't be controlled, only shared. In private, some leaders admitted the obvious. They were scared, not of exposure, but of misunderstanding. They worried that any misstep, any imperfect moment could be twisted into scandal. They feared that real faith, messy human faith, would be devoured by algorithms built to reward outrage. But others saw opportunity. They believed this was God's way of cleaning house, of forcing accountability that had been ignored for too long. They said the light hurt because it was shining where it had never been allowed before. For Joni, the weeks that followed were quiet, but heavy. The noise online had started to fade, but the questions didn't. She stayed focused on her work, hosting programs, recording devotionals, smiling through the pain. But those who knew her best could see it, the change. The spark in her eyes wasn't the same. She'd been through battles before, but this one wasn't fought in boardrooms or courtrooms. It was fought online, in public, with strangers picking apart every decision she made. And for Laura Lynn, the attention was both a blessing and a burden. Her audience grew, but so did the expectations. People wanted her to keep pushing, to keep questioning, to keep exposing. But deep down, she knew this wasn't just about chasing the next controversy. It was about forcing the church, and maybe even herself, to confront a simple question. What does truth really mean when everyone believes they already have it? Months later, when the headlines had moved on and the algorithms had found new scandals to chase, the story of Joni Lamb and Laura Lynn remained a quiet lesson, a reminder that faith doesn't make people perfect, and that power, even in ministry, always needs accountability. It showed that in the digital age, the walls between the pulpit and the public had fallen, and no amount of PR could rebuild them. The future of faith media will be written by those who understand that trust can't be demanded. It has to be earned, one honest word at a time. Viewers no longer want polished perfection. They want truth, the kind that doesn't need editing, the kind that survives scrutiny. Maybe that's what this whole storm meant in the end. That even in chaos, even in conflict, something real was being born. A new kind of faith conversation, raw, public, uncomfortable, but alive. Because if the story of Joni Lamb and Laura Lynn proved anything, it's that faith in the modern world doesn't crumble under questions. It just demands better answers.